Okay, now basically here, when I go for, excuse me. Okay, first of all, apologies for yesterday, but I was having an urgent appointment, so therefore I was not able to attend the class. Okay. Okay, basically when I go for database security, now till now we have discussed about the SQL, right, basic SQL, and also the ERD. Advanced data modeling is not basically nowadays recorded from you. It is usually, I will say, it is optional. Sometimes I will go to highlight some concepts there referring to the assignment. You know, when we discuss about when I give the assignment, we discuss about the patient. We have inpatient, outpatient. So sometimes I will highlight the concept from this module, but it's basically not recorded from you. Okay. Now, what I will go to do next is the following. First of all, I will go for today to explore a topic called stored procedures. Now, why I need to explore this one, even though stored procedure is not really related too much to security, but we'll see later that a trigger concept is basically built on a stored procedure. So if you understand the stored procedure concept, later trigger concept will be there, and usually we depend heavily on triggers from security point of view, point of view, and so on. So for today, I'll go discuss about what do you mean by stored procedure. Okay, then also I'll go to show by you showing examples on Dream Home database how this stored a procedure works. So therefore, let me just open the slide here. Okay, and let's go first for the theory part, then I'll go for the practical part. Now, just I want to highlight one thing. In general, you'll notice the following. In case that I'm giving a topic which is basically having programming part later, it means it's basically programming, okay, but I need to cover some theory. You'll notice that I'm moving a little bit fast in the theory part. I will not really focus on all the concepts in detail, just I will highlight some of the concepts, okay? Then later, when I go for the coding part, I will go to emphasize on this concept while I'm giving you the codes and so on. Just it will be more easier for usually the students to get the details or the information in first place. Okay, so therefore, today's topic will be once again is stored procedures. So what we will go to discuss here in the class, it will be how to implement the stored procedure and also how to create something called parameterized stored procedures. Now you will notice that in all the SQL command or SQL commands that we have covered earlier, basically we didn't deal with variables at all. That means we didn't deal with SQL language as a programming language. Now with this topic today, you'll see something different in SQL. Here I will go to use SQL as a programming language. That means you'll see later I will go to define variables inside the SQL language, not other programming language, okay? I will use, for example, let's say if statement, maybe I will say while statement and so on. So as we'll go to explore these things. Even I'll go to create something similar to function concept and so on, okay? And this is why I said here, I want to create something called parameterized stored procedure, as you'll see right now, Okay, so the learning outcome will be implement stored procedures, create parameterized stored procedures, and so on and so on. So if I want to ask the first, what is a stored procedure? If anyone heard this term or he have checked this concept earlier, what is a stored procedure? Anyone heard about this term? Or what you guess a stored procedure is? Okay. Now, A stored procedure, no idea, it's okay, no worries. A stored procedure is a group of transact SQL statements compiled into a single execution plan. Okay, now you have noticed till now is that if I want to apply any query, I will go only to apply one query. Maybe, okay, I want to apply like select a statement or update or insert or maybe create and so on. Now, with the introduction of stored procedure, what I can do, I can go to create, okay, or I can compile a group of statements, okay, and these statements will help me what? To achieve a specific task. For example, maybe I want to transfer money from one account A to account B. So I want to ensure that the money must move from account A to account B, right? And also it must be deducted from account A. So that means usually for this process, I need to have what? Two updated statements, not one. One to transfer the money to account B, right? Or one to deduct money from account A. Then the second one to move the money to account B to account B, okay? Now, we will see that we can do this in stored procedure. So I can add two update statements in one execution plan. So I will ensure that this thing is done correctly. Now, stored procedure can contain statements that perform operations, as you'll go to see right now, have or accept input parameters. Okay, so it can accept input parameters. Then return values or return sales value to indicate success or failure. Then return multiple output parameters. Return multiple output parameters. So notice here, stored procedure will look similar to function concept. Will look similar to function concept in programming in general. Now, what are the benefits of stored procedures? Now, before I go there, let me just store. Let me just go here for this diagram, okay? And let me just highlight what is stored procedure in first place, then how this is stored procedure works. How this stored procedure works. Now let's assume here we have a database, okay? In this database, we will have tables. For example, we have, let's say, branch table, we have staff table. Now, what I can do is the following. I can create a stored procedure. Now here the stored procedure is simple one. With the content of the stored procedure is very simple, because I will highlight later when I go for permissions what they mean by execute permission. I will not cover it today, but later, but it is included in the diagram here. Okay. We have something called execute permission. So I can say, okay, can give Mary something to execute, like execute the stored procedure. Now, basically here, the stored procedure will be something like a container where I can add multiple queries. Here I have created very simple query, okay? Just simply I want to join information from two tables. That means I want to get information from staff table and also what? From a branch table on the condition, So also, okay, get this information from staff branch, inner join on branch.branch number is equal staff.branch number. Okay. Now, can I add other queries? Yes, for sure. But for now, only I have this one. Now, when I execute, when I write this one here, I will go to save it with this name. That means later, I will not go to write the whole query. Later, just simply I will say execute, then what? The stored procedure name. For example, assume that I name this stored procedure as A. So I will say execute A directly. Database engine will go to call that stored procedure, then it will go to execute the code inside that stored procedure. Now, if I want to ask, referring to this idea. What are the benefits that I can get? What are the benefits that I can get? Please give me the answer in the chat box. What are the benefits that I can get from stored procedure? From security point of view, for example, how stored procedure can make my system more secure? Abstraction, right? Reduce time, better performance, can. What else? Let's go for the first one, abstraction. What do you mean by abstraction? Can you give me an example? You said a bit abstraction. So can you elaborate more? Can be used with parameters. Okay, can be correct. Reduce time, better performance. How stored procedure can reduce time? Why stored procedure can have better performance from normal query? Because this is a query, right? I just put it, for example, in our example here. This is a query, just I put it in stored procedure. So how can this really make it as a better performance or reduce the time for execution?
Sir, because you execute once with many tasks.
Okay, so first I will go to execute one with many tasks. So even on the network traffic, if I have an application, I'll go to send only the stored procedure name. And the stored procedure name, I have, let's say, 10 queries. So all the work will be what? On the server side. I'm not going to send 10 queries. I'll go send one stored procedure. This is one thing. But the other important factor is that anytime you write a query, let me just go here. And let's assume that I want to go for this file that I have covered earlier, the DML file. Now, each time when I want to execute a query, for example, set F5, it will give me an error. Each time I will try to execute a query, right? What will happen here? If I want to execute the query, what will happen is the following. What will happen is the following. Each time database engine will go to check for what? For this query. That means it will go to the analysis and it will go to check, is this the best execution plan or not? Is this the best execution plan or not? For example, just to make this more clear, let's assume, for example, I want to go for this query. Then I said here, okay, give me what we call it as the actual execution plan. Then say execute. Notice here we have the execution plan. Usually we read the execution plan from right to left, from right to left. So notice here we have a clustered index. Here, both 1, 2. Then here it says like we have the nested loop and so on. We call this what? The execution plan. This shows internally how SQL Server would handle your query. Now, each time, if we didn't save this one, each time, if let's assume we have different applications, maybe web application, maybe mobile application. Each time you send this query to the server, database engine will go to the what? Database engine will go to a check for this once again. Now, when I have a stored procedure, what will happen? Simply, I will do that once, then that plan will be saved. So next time, database engine will not go to check except if it notices there is some modification on the stored procedure. But otherwise, the plan is ready. I know the code, what is the code supposed to be in there in the stored procedure. So simply I can access or I can execute it directly. It is like to have the cache concept in websites. Not too much clear example, but at least the idea, at least the idea. Okay, so this will make the things also um, faster in general. Okay, clear till now? Any question? Any question till now? Okay. Now let me here just go to check the let's say benefits one by one. Now the first one will be share application logic. Share application logic. In this case, all client can use the same store procedure to ensure consistent data access and modification. Now, one of the major concerns usually for database administrator is that is the query which is sent by the application, either website, desktop application, or application, is optimized. This is the first thing. That means one of the major problems, if let's say I allow the developers to access to my database directly, okay, without creating something like a store procedure, that means simply they will go to send the queries they think that it can, answer the reports that they want to generate. But the issue usually will happen is the following. If that query was not optimized, each time when this query is sent to the server or to the database management system, it will make the server moving slowly. Why? Because it is not optimized. There is some issues. There is some problems. So one of the things that we can do is the following. As a database administrator, I can ask that application, let's say programmer, which information you want. Depending on that, I will go to create the query. So, okay, this is the information that you want. He says he will agree, for example, with that details. Then what I will do, I will go to create a store procedure. I say, okay, please take this one and call it. It is like creating a function. It is like creating a function in general. The concept is similar. The concept is similar, but it is not function because we have functions in SQL basically. Okay, so the first part is what? Share application logic. Also, since I am creating this stored procedure, I can give this the same stored procedure to what? To different developers for different applications. Like for example, maybe I can give this to web, let's say a page, let's say application, or maybe a mobile application. So at the end, they will go to request for the same information, which is provided by this stored procedure. Okay, so the first one. Second one, shield database schema details. Users never need to access the tables directly. And this is one of the security features. For example, to make it more clear, if you are dealing with APIs, for example, any company, for example, if they have, let's say, some application they want the other users to use, they will go to provide API, right? And the API, you'll not be able to access the whole system because they are afraid, maybe you will go to manipulate it. Like, for example, I have seen many projects for the students, maybe using, let's say, Google API, for example. So basically what they are doing is that they are giving you the information that you need, not more than that, not more than that. So in this case, shield database schema details, users never need to access the tables directly because I am having another layer for what to access the tables. So I have the tables, then I have what? The stored procedure. Okay. It provides security mechanism. Any question till now, by the way? Any question till now? The query and the tables. That means yes, for sure, the query. Because in the example now, I will show you. You will not be able to view what? The code inside the store procedure. Only you will see the name of the store procedure. That means later on go for the logins and security, you will say that I will go to give a permission to execute the store procedure. That means a user, he can't maybe access any table. Now I will highlight this with an example. From theory, later I will give detailed example from practical point of view. Okay. But I can do that. In reality, I can go for one advanced level, which I will go to highlight it right now. And this feature, which I will highlight right now, is really useful when you're dealing with big databases, when you're dealing with big databases in general. Okay, so no worries. I will go to answer this once again when I go for the practical examples. When I go for the practical examples. Now, let's go for this point here. To provide security mechanisms, users can be granted permission to execute a stored procedure even if they do not have permission to access the table or views to which the stored procedure refers. So what that means, one of the features, okay, one of the features that the stored procedure have is the following. Let's assume we have the following scenario. Let's assume that we have the following scenario. Assume here that I have this query. Okay, that means Mary here want to execute the query. Assume now this query, let me just copy it. Let me just, and let me just go to add text. Assume this is now tell them what is a query, it is not saved in a stored procedure. It is not saved in a stored procedure. Okay, now in this query, I want to access two tables. This query, I want to access how many tables? Two. Assume the following. Assume that Mary directly, she has something called select permission. Later discuss about permissions, okay? But I'm saying here the direct permission to Mary is what? To select information from a staff table. Mary, on the other hand, she don't have, let me just remove this one here. Mary till now, she can't access the stored procedure, and also she is not having any access to branch table. That means Mary can what? Can only select information from staff table. Branch table, she can't see at all. She can't even view the data from branch table. Now, let's assume for one of the queries, Mary is required to access or to get some information from a branch table. So we have like new requirements. Then it says, okay, I want what? Mary to be able to get information from branch table. Now, when I check the current something called authorization matrix, I will find that, okay, we have Mary, right? Then Mary is supposed to have, let's say, select to staff table. So she can access staff table, okay? But she can't access branch table. Now, one of the features for stored procedure is that I can make Mary access to branch table even though she is not having direct permission to access that table. Example. Here when I say Mary and I will give her a permission called execute, okay? You'll notice here we have what? We have the stored procedure. The stored procedure is what? Selecting information from staff and a branch table. So that means now the stored procedure show me what? Supposed to show me information from branch table. Mary can't access directly to the staff table. Now one of the features of the stored procedure is that the query here inside the stored procedure will be able to access the branch table even though there is no direct permission to do that. Even though there is no direct permission to do that. Clear? Any question till now? Any question till now? So once again, I can have a stored procedure. The stored procedure, if I have the execute permission on that stored procedure, it will allow me to access data in my tables, even though I don't have direct permission to access there. Now, when this usually is useful, usually this is usually when I'm generating reports. When I'm generating reports, let's assume I have a query which is joining, let's say, 5 or 6 tables. Now, the user, for example, Mary, she has the permission to access all the first 5 tables, but for number 6, it is not there. She don't have direct access. So that means she will not be able to run the query because what the information will not be enough, or it will be missing. So what we do in this case, we create a stored procedure. Then we give her the permission to execute that stored procedure. Clear till now? Any question? Any question till now? Okay, next, improve performance. As we mentioned earlier, a stored procedure implement many tasks as a series of transact SQL. All these transact SQL become part of a single execution plan on the server. Then reduce network traffic. Reduce network traffic. Now, rather than send hundreds of transaction statements over the network, users can perform a complex operation by sending a single statement, which reduces the number of requests that pass between client and server. Between client and server. Okay, clear till now before we go to the practical part? Any question? Okay, now let's go here for our database here. Then let me just go to check for the stored procedures. Okay, so procedures. Okay, just give me a moment. We should go data, database. Now let's go to create the first stored procedure and see how this works Now the syntax to create any object in database management system using SQL, it will be the keyword create, then the object type, then the name of that object, then the name of that object. So notice here I create very simple stored procedure which says select all from staff. Select all from staff. So the syntax will be create procedure, either the full name or only this part. Then the stored procedure name. Now I will say create a procedure, the name of the stored procedure as, then I will say select all from staff. Now highlight, execute. Notice here it says command completed successfully. It didn't give me any result. Why? Because I'm creating the object right now. I'm creating the object right now. Okay. Now, where to find the stored procedure? To find the stored procedure, we'll go for your database. In our case, is Dream Home database. So I'll go here for Dream Home, expand it. Okay, we have database diagram, tables, views, external resources, synonyms, and programmability. For us, store procedure will be on what we call it as database level. Database level. Now you will hear later that always I mentioned we have this on table level, this the other thing is on database level, the other thing is let's say on server level. Why? Because it's very important for you to know you are working on which level, because each level have the like different features or characteristics when we are dealing with it. When we are dealing with it in first place. So create a procedure, SP staff, as select all from staff. Now when I go here, notice we have two types of stored procedures. We have built-in stored procedures like built-in functions, and we have what? We have staff. We have staff as a table. We have staff as a table. So for example here, if now I want to check for my stored procedure, modify. Notice here I will get the alter command because we know that if I create any object, alter command will be the keyword to modify that object. So here, if I want to modify it, I can just simply go and write anything else. Maybe I can write join statement or so. Okay, clear? Now, there is something called system stored procedures. These are the built-in stored procedures that you can use them directly. For example, later I will go to use something called sp underscore add role. I will go to use sp add login and so on. Okay, clear? Okay. Now, let's go here for our stuff and let's see how this will work. So I'll go for Dream Home here. Then notice what I will go to do. I'll go to write the keyword execute. Then I'll go to give it the stored procedure name. I'll go to give to the stored procedure name. So I'll go to highlight this one here. Then go for execute. Notice now I get what? I get all the information from the staff table. Because the query was select all from staff. Select all. From staff. Clear till now? Any question? Any question till now? Okay. If you are at the beginning of a batch file, you can use what? You can simply use sp staff directly. So you can just simply say, okay, execute sp staff. I press on my keyboard on F5. So either click here, execute, or you press on what? On F5, or you press on F5. Now, can I modify my store procedure? For sure. So notice here what I want to do. I want to modify the store procedure by, rather than saying show me all the columns like this one here, only I want to see the first name and last name. Only I want to see what the first name or last name. So therefore, alter procedure sp staff as select first name, last name from staff. So highlight, execute. What happens here? I have changed the store procedure from live. Okay. Sorry, here I have changed, let's say, the store procedure from the full, let's say, from getting the full columns to what? First name and last name only. Now, usually our recommendations that if they check or they want to execute any store procedure, that always go and see the content of that store procedure. Like for example, here I'll go for sp staff. Let me just execute the command just to confirm. So it is there. Now when I go for the sp staff here and modify, I supposed to see this query. So notice here, alter procedure, then what? Select first name, last name from staff, and so on. Okay, clear? Now, if I want to execute the procedure once again, what will happen? Now, since we are dealing with an object here, what I can do, I can also delete that stop procedure. So I can say delete or drop a procedure SP staff. So if I want to do that, highlight, execute. Notice here now when I go for probability, refresh, it is not there. It is not there. Clear? Any question till now? Okay, so far so good. So what we have done is first, I create a sub procedure. Second, I have modified. Third thing, I have deleted. Now let's go for the next example here. What I want to do here, or what I want to prove simply, is that stored procedures, okay, stored procedure can execute more than one query at the same time. So I will go to say create a procedure, the name of the procedure as the notice here we have two queries. Select all from branch, select all from staff. So highlight, execute. Command completed successfully, that means everything was done okay without an issue as usual. And then here I'll go for sub procedures. And now we have what is penalty. Now let me execute this sub procedure. So I will say execute SP multi. Highlight. F5. Notice here what happens. It generates the result of these two queries. Select all from branch and also select all from staff. Okay. For now, I will give you like break for 10 or 15 minutes. Then here I will go to begin to create a store procedure with one input parameter. So just I will show you the code so we can discuss about it later. Now notice here we begin want to create variables. And this is the first time most likely you are using it on SQL. Like earlier usually you use the normal like DML and DDL commands, DML and DDL commands. Okay. So for now, just take a break like 10 to 15 minutes, then we'll follow up with the remaining of the codes, with the remaining of the codes. So one and sorry, okay. So here basically at 3:10, we'll go to proceed with the next, let's say, codes. For now, just I'll mute the mic. So see you after the break. Okay, attention please. Now let's go here for the next code, which is the procedure that we create right now. This store procedure will have one input parameter, So therefore, the syntax to do with that will be create, then a procedure, then the stored procedure name. Now, in general, we know that in any programming language, I must be aware of, let's say, adding the, avoiding spaces and so on. Even though with the name, I mean here, even though in SQL, okay, I can use square brackets if I want to add, let's say, spaces and so on. But usually we try to avoid this. Now, after that, I will go to add the first parameters here. Now, notice in SQL, we use the @ sign. Then I will say here the name of the parameter, Okay, give me 1 minute, please. Please just make sure if you open the mic. Okay, just you can follow up with me. Otherwise, just make sure if you open, just close it once again. Now, so we have, let's say, the first parameter, which is first name 1, with the type varchar 50, Now, usually when we here, you need to check what the type of the column that you have, because I want to access the first name column. So we have two ways to do that. The first way is just simply I can go for my table here to go to staff. Then from there, I'll go for columns. So I'll know that the first name here referring to my design is varchar 50. Okay, and you need to ensure that the length here for the variable is having the same data type to avoid any issues, in general. So we'll say here add first name 1. I add first name 1 just to distinguish between the column name and just the parameter name, not more than that. As then here I'll go to write my query. So I will say select all from staff where first name is equal the input parameter here. So I will go to highlight my query, highlight, execute. Now command completed successfully, as you can see here. So I will go once again to the programmability, and then from there I will go to check for the stored procedure. So notice now we have SP multi and also SP staff stored procedure, because we delete the first one, which is SP staff. Now, when I go here to expand these parameters, you will notice here that it gives me one parameter, which is called first name 1, and give me a small arrow here. Maybe you can, I'm not sure if it's clear or not, but the arrow indicates that this is what input parameter. This is input parameter. Now, when I want to execute the store procedure here, I need to go to provide the input parameter value. It is like I'm calling, a function in general. So therefore, I will say execute the name of the store procedure, then the given name. So for example, if I want first to select all from staff, just to see all the content of the staff table, so I'll say select all from staff. Okay, so this is all the information in my staff table. Now I want to get the store procedure where the first name is Anne. So highlight, execute. Okay. So now just simply I'm doing what? I am adding the value which will be sent through that parameter, which is first name 1, So for example, I want to say, let's say, add, Alex, for example, then try to execute. Notice here I will not get anything. That's right. S1 or first name is variable, and basically it is local variable. Okay, it is what? It is variable. It is local variable, because also, see later I have a global variable in SQL, but the global variable will begin with 2 @ sign. Okay, and we have few global variables. Usually in transaction management, I'll go to use one of them, which is called count. Okay, so basically I am creating what variables. I am creating here variables. Clear? Any question till now? So by this we have created the first store procedure without having any input or output parameter. Then we have what? We have created the second store procedure with one input parameter, Okay. Now the next example here, just I am following up. I want to create a store procedure with two input parameters. So it is the same example that we have above, just I want to add another, let's say, input parameter. So the same thing, I will go for create store procedure, the name of the store procedure, okay? Then I will go for the first parameter, I will say at POS, which later I will go to replace the value, or I will go to compensate the value of the position, okay, either this manager, assistant, and so on. Then this is the data type. Then we have salary, which is integer. Then the same thing as select first name, position, salary, gender from staff, where position is equal the position, and salary is greater than the given salary. And salary is greater what? The given parameter, as you can see here. Clear? Any question till now? So basically, yes, I'll go to highlight this one. Yes, it must be exactly usually as a table to avoid any issues, because sometimes it happens, maybe by mistake, you are saying, okay, position is varchar. Let's go here. Let me just give you an example. Assume here if I go for dream home, okay, maybe for position, for example, I said it is varchar 20, okay, for example. Now, if the value is less, usually it is not a big deal. Okay, and maybe will be limited because here even position is just usually like not 50, but it's like generic, value which is added to the column. But the issue usually it will be the following. I said, okay, position is varchar 100. Now, why we will face here a problem? Because we said position is what? It can accept maximum 50 characters. But now in the parameter here say what? 100. So for assumption, if I have a position which is greater than 50 characters, the stored procedure here will accept that. But when I try to, for example, maybe I have insert a statement, for example, when I want to insert the data in the table, I will get an error. Okay, so usually we always make sure that the stored procedure variables, okay, they are similar to the same data type that we have for the columns in our table, in my table, to avoid any issues, or communications. Okay, clear? Any question till now? Okay. So therefore here I will say that the position is, let's say, okay, it is, let's say, varchar 50, and salary is integer. So just I will go to highlight this one, then I will go to execute. Command completed successfully, as you can see here. So I will go once again to Dream Home database, then I'll go for the store procedure under programmability, refresh, then I'll have what? SB staff underscore position underscore salary. Clear till now? Any question? So we have created a store procedure with one input parameter. We have created a store procedure with two input parameter. I think the concept is clear for you because you are dealing with, let's say, functions earlier. So the concept is not really hard, I would say.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is it necessary? Do you have to actually put like a select statement at the end of the stop procedure to see the output?
What do you mean?
Like, because now when you run a stop procedure, if there's no select statement at the end, then there's no output. So you wouldn't know how would you know whether the store procedure is working or not?
Okay, good.
Do
good,
you
good.
need to put it there or what?
Okay, you mean that, for example, now I'm saying, okay, select this information, then give me these values, right? So I can confirm it works or not in first place, right?
Yeah.
Before I compile the store procedure.
Yeah, when you compile a store procedure, if there's no select star from something, let's say at the end, is there a way to debug it and know if the store procedure is successfully created or not?
Okay, usually this is the point I want to highlight here. This is the, okay, let me just highlight this in an example. Now let's assume, let me just make this more clear. Let's assume that, okay, I have created this store procedure, right? So let me just copy the code. Then paste it here. Then let's assume here I want to say, okay, create this store procedure, which is called 1, 2, 3. So just I'm trying to create what? Another stored procedure. Then I would say select this information from a branch, not for by mistake. For example, I said the branch, not the staff. Okay. Then I try to create the stored procedure. Let's see what will happen. Execute. Now, usually database engine will go to check all the what? It will go to check all the codes inside even your store procedure. So for example, here, notice because select is coming from a staff table, I put the branch table, it says, sorry, this will not work. So it will go what, to check this, let's say, it will go to check the codes or the syntax one by one, okay? So therefore, I will get there. Now, why all my queries now I'm using select? Because just I want to make it simple to view the data. The select statement is the easiest to handle because I'm not modifying the data, so just I'm retrieving the data. But later I'll go for some examples. No, I can go for insert or update commands and so on. Okay, but for now, when I do the compilation, database engine will go to check also the code inside my stored procedure. Okay, clear? At least for this part. Okay, because later we'll have other examples. Not always, not always. We can create a stored procedures without select statement at all. But I'm using here select because it is easy for us to explain the concept. Right? I'm not modifying anything, just I'm saying, okay, I retrieve the information. But can I create a store procedure with no single select statement? For sure. You can do that.
Debugging is possible without without putting a select statement, right? Like
usually it can be, but usually we add select statement for me personally rather than go to, debugging and so on. If I want to check the code, just I will go for add select statement. It will make it easier for me just to know what are the errors, because sometimes I want to go for the formal debugging, let's say, process, it will cause you headache. So for me, just sometimes what I will do, even you'll see this later, I will go to add some selected statements from time to time just to see what is the result. So I can, for me as developer, see, okay, the content here was correct, this was wrong, and so on. But in general, no, there are some cases for store procedure, I will not add any selected statement. Because simply I don't want to view anything, just I want to add some like different operations and so on. Maybe insert, update, or delete. Clear?
So once
we
it's
can
done,
do
you
that.
have to remove the select statement, is it? Or no?
No, I will not add even the selected statement.
Or
I
would
will
that?
not do
Okay.
that. I will not do that.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you, sir.
Okay. So selected statement here, just I'm adding it because what? Because just it is simple to add the selected statement. It is usually the easiest example with selected statement. I don't need to check the code, just I know the whole table what it includes. Then when I go to add select, yes, it will be working without any issue. Okay, clear till now? So not all the storage procedures required to have select statement. No, you have storage procedures with no select statement at all. Now, let's go here for executing the store procedure. Now, what will happen after I create this? Now delete this one, no need for this one, okay? What will happen if I execute this command? It will work or it will give me an error after I build the stored procedure. it will give me an error. Why? Manager first, right? Right. Parameter must be arranged because I didn't mention the parameter name. Now notice here when I call the store procedure sp underscore pos underscore salary, right? So this is store procedure. Okay, this store procedure will have what? Two values. We have 20,000 and what we have manager. Now what happens here? What happens here is that position here will get what the first value, and salary because this is how I arrange the parameters, right? And manager will have what? The second value. Now I will say if we run this query, we will be lucky in our case scenario here. Why? Because simply it says, okay, error converting data type varchar to integer. Now we know in SQL language, I have two types of, in any programming language, we have two types of what? Conversion from data type to another data type, right? We have implicit conversion and we have explicit conversion. Implicit is something that SQL Server will do without even consulting you, just they will do that. For example, if I want to insert a number, integer, in varchar column, database engine will not go to check, oh, sorry, do you need to change the integer to varchar? No, just simply it will go to insert it, right? But if I want to insert character or something with varchar, for example, to integer, no, here we need to do, parsing or casting, or that depends on, okay, what you want to do, right? So basically the idea is that here we are lucky. Why? Because by mistake, manager supposed to be inserted in an integer data type referring to my stored procedure, so I get the error. But usually the problem that we are facing is that imagine that the two values here were, for example, let's say characters. Like for example, so we have, let's say, position and first name. In that case, we will have a logical error. Why? Because simply I can accept the manager value in the first name. I can accept the manager value in the first name. Why? Because first name and position, for example, they are varchar of this type. And we know that logical errors is usually that errors that will cause you headache because you will have a lot of things to do basically, or you have to investigate what is happening there. Clear? So always you need to be aware for this point. Okay. So the correct thing will be what? Put the order or put the parameters in the specific order. And the best way to do that is to mention the parameter name. When you mention the parameter name, the location is not important. Either this is the first parameter or the last parameter. Why? Because you highlighted what? The parameter name. So notice here what we have done. We said, okay, select this information where salary is equal 8,000 and position is equal to what? Position is equal to manager. So highlight. Notice here it will work without any problem. It will work without any problem. So in general, I usually would recommend that go to use the input parameter, the parameter names, except if you're dealing with one input parameter, no need, just simply you can add the value directly. You can add the value directly. Okay, clear? Any question till now? Any question till now before I proceed? Okay, so far so good. Now let's go to use some of the built-in stored procedure. Just I want to highlight here that all the built-in stored procedures in SQL, they begin with SB underscore. They will begin with the naming, okay, or with the prefix, which is SP underscore. So usually if you want to create any stored procedure, it is not recommended to add this part. That means otherwise, if you are working in a company, other developers will assume that stored procedure is what is a system stored procedure. It means the stored procedure developed by Microsoft, not by you. Okay. So usually we need to avoid adding sp underscore when I rename my stored procedures. Now I said earlier, for the stored procedures we have the user defined. If you want to go for function concept, user defined functions, like, or stored procedures which is built by the users. Okay. At the same time, we have what? System stored procedures. System stored procedures. Now, usually here, if I want to check, I will have a huge amount number of built-in, let's say, system stored procedures. And usually what we do, we go for filtering these stored procedures. So for example, here, if I want to go to right click, filter, then I'll go for filter setting. So maybe I will say, okay, if I know the name, I can go to the name directly. So maybe I will say, okay, I know that maybe I know like depends, for example. Then I will say, okay. So notice here, will go to give me what? The parameter, as you can see here. So it give me, this is the stored procedure name. And this is the parameters that I have. This is the parameter that I have. Now, let's try to use this one and see what we can get. Now, this SP depends will show the object and what are the things related to that object. So, for example, if I said execute, then SP underscore depends, then the object name, because this is the parameter name, right? Then I said here, show me the object which is called SP staff underscore position underscore salary. So when I highlight this one, F5, notice here it says, okay, the things related to this stored procedure, they are, first of all, the columns that we have, which is first name, position, gender, and salary. Selected, yes. Updated, no. Them are selected. There is no update inside my query, okay? So updated, no. Then what is the type of the object that I want to access? They are user table, and this is the table name, which is called the staff, okay? Okay, clear? Now, if I want to say, okay, let's go to check another object, you will notice here that different objects will have different things or different results, or the result format will be different. Let me show what I mean by that. Notice here now we discuss name, type, updated, selected, and column, right? Now let me just go to copy this one. And okay, it is here. Let me just copy this one. Or let me just highlight both queries and see the difference, okay? So notice one, the first one saying what? Show me all this information. Well, the second one, just simply when I say stuff, it show me the name, okay? And also, what are the type of that object, which is related to my staff table. So for example, now, because we have created stored procedures that can access to the staff table. So notice here it says we have branch staff, which is view. These are things I have created earlier in other classes. Okay, branch name, which is a view. But let me show you what are these. So for example, here if I have the table, notice here we have what? The view, and I have created two views. So here, if I want to go for the branch staff, select the information, I can simply just view the first name, last name, and what? Entity instead of the whole table, instead of the whole table, as we know, right? So notice here, the others, they are what? They are stored procedures, because staff was mentioned in the SP multi, SP staff, and also the SP staff position. Okay, clear till now. Any question? Any question? Okay, so far so good. So this is an example for a built-in stored procedure, and later you can check for others. Later we can check for others. Okay. Now let's go here for the next case scenario, and here we'll see how we can really utilize stored procedures. Till now, just simply I'm saying, okay, how to create a procedure, having this parameter, that parameter, and so on. Now let's go for the following case scenario. Let's go for the following case scenario. Let's assume here we have in my dream home database, I have the branch table. I have what? The branch table. Now I want to create a stored procedure. I want to create what? A stored procedure. Okay, this stored procedure will do the following. It will go to check the primary key values. If the branch exists, okay, it will go to update the related information. If the branch is not exist, that means, okay, I go to branch here, it was not there. I will go to insert a new record. Once again, I will go to create a stored procedure. The stored procedure will do the following. It first will go to check what? For the primary key. If the primary key that I sent, okay, when I write down the parameters, if the primary key exists, what I will do, I will go to update the row where that primary key value matching the parameter that value that I'm sending. In case there is no branch number at all, what I will go to do, I will go to insert the values here. I will go to insert a new record. I want to insert a new record. Clear? Any question till now? Okay, so let's see how this works. Let's see how this works. Now, first of all, I have created a stored procedure called the branch insert update, okay, with four parameters, The parameters are branch number, which will handle the branch, because the table, let me just go for the branch table, 4 columns, just make it more clear. So we have 4 columns, I want to send 4 values. Branch number, because I want to save the value in the branch number column later. Street to be saved in the street, city in city, and postcode to postcode. So here I added the data types. I said bar chart 20, 20, 20, and so on. Okay. Then notice here what I have done. I said here if exists. Now exist basically is one of the keywords that we use in SQL. It will go to send me back binary result. That means either 0 or 1. Okay. So notice here what I said. If exists, select all from branch where branch number is equal to the given branch number. For example, assume when I execute the stored procedure, I give the number B00, let's say 7, for example, for assumption. So here the query will go to what, or the existing query will go to do what? It check to see. If it found 1, it will return 1. Okay, that means it was successfully able to find 1 or that result. If no, it will return 0. It will return 0. So if it return 1, that means I found that branch number. I will go the first programming construct here for my if statement. So I'll go to say begin, update the branch. Okay, so now I'm using what? I'm using update statement. So update the branch, set the street equal to what? To the input parameter value, city equal to the city, postcode equal to the value, where a branch number, and this is very important, equal at branch number. It means I must make sure that I'm updating what? The correct values for responding to the parameter name that I have, or parameter number, sorry, that I have. Now notice here, just to ensure or to know what happens inside my trigger, I use the print statement. or print keyword. The print simply, usually in SQL, later I will go to highlight another one. Usually we have two main keywords that we use, either a print to show basic info, or I use something called raise error. And raise error is basically considered to be as more advanced. Later I'll go to highlight it in details when we reach triggers, when we reach the triggers. But for now, just I want to see and show what is the branch number as a parameter, and also I want to see that row was updated. Now, in case that when I check for the if statement, check for the branch number, it was not there. That means there is no row with that values. What I will go to do, I will go for else, then I will say begin, and here simply I just will execute an insert statement. So I will say insert into branch values, branch number, street, city, postcode, and so on. Then print a new row inserted, then that is the end of my code. That is the end of my code. Clear? Any question? Okay.
Yeah, sir, I have a question.
Okay.
The print branch number plus row updated, right? If you
Yes.
don't put that print statement,
Yes.
will the output come out in the console?
Okay, and now basically here, let me just execute just to highlight this one. A print will show me, always here we have two things when I execute any query. Let me just show it. You will have the result, if I have a result, and you have the messages, right? So it will appear usually in the messages.
The
Okay?
print will appear in the messages, is it?
Yes, yes. Let's see. Let me just show you. Or in the result, let's see. But usually it will be in the messages. Okay, let me just highlight this one, then I will execute, then we can discuss about it. So highlight and execute. So now we have the stored procedure. So I'll go here for probability, okay? Stored procedures, then I'll go for refresh. So in this case, we have, let's say, branch, insert, update, branch, insert, update. Now, let me try first to execute the first query here by sending the following information. So I want to say execute the stored procedure where I want to give the following values. The first one, B016, then I will say X123, then W123, then bucket 123. Now notice here, B016 is not exist in my table, right? We don't have a branch with a primary key, which is B016. Okay? So therefore, what will happen here if I want to execute this stored procedure? So I want to ask, what will happen here if I want to execute this stored procedure?
Insert into
The-
branch.
It's supposed to add the new record in what? In the branch table, right? So let's see. Highlight, execute. Okay. Now notice here, I didn't get any result, right? Because here I don't have select the query, so I don't get any result. Now in messages here, it says one row affected, then new row inserted, okay? And this is because I said a print that message. If I didn't say print, just simply I will receive one row affected inside my table. Okay, clear? Now, if I want to go to my branch table, notice here that we have B016, okay? Then the following values, which is, let's say, X1 to 3, X or W1 to 3, then bucket 1 to 3, then bucket 1 to 3. Clear till now? Any question till now? Any question till now? Okay, now let's go to execute the store procedure once again. Okay, but this time I want to do the following. I want to say, okay, make this one as it, and here I want to modify some value. So I will say, for example, this is called A instead of X, and this is called B. And rather than bucket 1, 2, 3, just I will say it is bucket. Now, if I execute this stored procedure, what will happen? If I execute this stored procedure, what will happen? It will update, right? It will update. Why? Because the record or the primary key referring to my statement here, if exists, so when I have the branch number, which is B006, it is already there, right? So therefore, simply, it will go to execute this query. Clear? So highlight, call the store procedure, then execute. Notice here what happens. It says one row affected, B016 row updated. So here it did do insert. Here it have done what? It has done, oh sorry, it simply updated the record. So when I go here for my branch, and then I will go for execute, notice here what happens. The value changes from X to A and B. And also bucket from bucket 1 to 3 to bucket. Clear? Any question till now? Any question till now? So once again, to summarize what I have done here, I said I want to create a stored procedure. This stored procedure will go to do the following. First of all, it will go to check for the primary key value, okay, from the send parameters, or from the parameters that I send it through what? Through stored procedure. In case the row is there or the primary key is there, I'll go to update that row. In case the primary key is not there, simply I'll go to insert the record. So to do that, I use first if statement, then I use the keyword which exists, and we know that exists will return either 0 or 1. Okay, so I said if exists, select all from branch where branch number is equal at the branch number, then begin update the branch, and so on and so on. Okay, else insert a new record. Clear? Any question till now? Okay, now let's go for the last example here, which is creating a stored procedure with output parameter. Now the idea here is that I want to create a stored procedure where I can do some calculations, okay? Then instead of sending an input parameter value, just simply I will return value. You know, like the same thing in functions. So I can do some calculations, right? Maybe I want to do summation for two numbers. Then what? I want to return the summation of those two numbers to the main function, for example. The same thing goes here to some extent. So I want to create a stored procedure with output parameter. That means I will do some calculation, then I will save it to that parameter. Then I will go to use that parameter in other programming constructs. So to do that, the syntax will be as follows. Create a procedure, sum salary, for example. The notice here when I set add sum sal, I add here money, then output. I added what? Money as data type, and output must be mentioned there as an output parameter. We have noticed in the input parameter, we didn't have to define any keyword, right? But for the output, it must be there. Then, notice here what I have done. I said select at sum sal where equal to sum salary. We know that usually summation, sum is an aggregate function, right? And usually sum will return one value, will return one value, except if I want to go for what? Grouping by using group by and so on, that will be another story. But for now, I said here, some salary is saved to the output parameter value. Okay, clear till now? Any question till now? Okay, so highlight the stored procedure, then execute. Now, when I go for the stored procedures here, notice we have what? We have some underscore salary. We have some underscore salary. When I expand this one here, the columns or the parameters, you will notice that, okay, now this is what? An out parameter. This is an output parameter. Clear? Any question till now? Now, notice what I will do here. First of all, assume that I want to highlight this query and I want to say execute some salary at some cell, not one, at some cell because I have this as the output parameter. Then I said output and execute this command. It will work or it will give me an error. If I said execute some salary at some cell output, it will work or it will give me an error.
Sir, question.
Yes,
What's the declare keyword mean?
forget declare for now.
Okay.
Just for now, if I only execute this one, it will work or it give me an error. What is the output for executing this stored procedure? It should work. Any other opinion?
I think it will work, but it won't output anything.
It will work, but not put any, give any output. Okay, let's see. Highlight, execute. Directly, it gives you an error. Now, attention, please, for what happens here. Now, this output parameter is outside what? Is outside, or sorry, inside my trigger, right? It is what? Inside my trigger. Clear? Now, when I want to take this value, which is listed by the output parameter, to use it outside, that means when I call the stored procedure, I can't, and depending on, it is like when I want to say call by reference or call by value when I'm dealing with function. Here, I will need to do what you call as call by value. That means I must, outside the stored procedure, create a new variable. Create what? A new variable to handle that data, okay? So therefore, notice here what I have done or what I have said. I said here declare at some cell one. Why I add at some cell one? Just to show that this one here, this parameter, is different than this parameter. They are not the same. This one is an output parameter inside my stored procedure. Declare keyword will be used to declare variables. If I'm dealing with the normal SQL commands, I will use declare to declare a variable. Now, inside the stored procedure, I will not do that. Simply just I will say the stored procedure, then I will give the variable name, right? Or the parameter name directly without using declare. Clear? But declare will be used if I'm using it even inside trigger stored procedure. If inside the syntax here, I can also use declare to declare some variables, then assign to them some values. and so on and so on. Okay. So for now, what you need to do is to declare, you can see like local variable. That means assume the scope of this variable is only here, right? And here I need to declare a variable to handle the output parameter. Now I said this is declare at SAM-SAL1 just to show that this is different from the output parameter. Then you must say what? Money. Then later when you say execute the store procedure name, you need to give what? A new declared variable. Then you must mention as output. Now when I do that, if I execute my stored procedure, notice here it show me committed successfully, but there is no result, right? Because simply I'm saying, okay, move the data from here to the local variable, but I didn't say print any value or so on. So the stored procedure executed, but basically I didn't get any result. I didn't get any result. Now what I want to do is the following. What I want to do is the following. Now here just I want to select sum from sum just to know what is the summation value. So I can create the second programming construct. Okay, so it is 100,000, which is less than 30,000, right? So now what I want to do, I want to use another programming construct outside what? The trigger. So I will say, oh sorry, store procedure. So I will say if at sum underscore sal1 is less than 130, okay, 1000, begin a print that value, then say print sum salary is less than 130, else go and print this value, okay, and say the same thing, salary must be more than, or sorry, salary is more than 130. So highlight, then execute. So notice here, first of all, okay, in my, now this basically is not recorded from you to add this query, just I added just to show you that when you see the message you can like understand why, what is the original value supposed to be there and what the message that I get. So notice here I said, okay, what was the value? It was, let's say 102,000, then it is less than 130,000. Clear? Any question before I take the attendance?
Sir,
So
I have a
that's,
question.
yes.
The term money, can we change to other thing, or is it fixed?
No, money is a data type. In reality, it is a variant of numeric. I did discuss here about data types in general. Let me just, while I take the attendance, I will just highlight about this one. In SQL Server, you will find that we have basic, in any programming language, we have a specific data types, right? Integer, string, let's say, maybe numeric, that depends. Now in SQL Server or other database management systems, what they have done was the following. What was done was the following, okay? Let me just take the attendance, okay. This is DBS, which lab? Now we have many labs. This DBS lab, referring to the schedule, which lab? This is supposed to be on, oh, sorry, this is the lecture, right? Wallahi, now I'm confused. This is the lecture, right? Okay, this is the lecture. So it will be lecture 2, because now this naming is just simply is killing us officially. Let me just, okay, I will say done, then I will say start time. It is at what time? At 2 o'clock. Okay, let's go for this time. What happened, what they have done in SQL? No, output is just simply indicating is this parameter is input or output. In input, we don't add it. That means by default it is input, okay? But output, just I indicate that, okay, this data type or this parameter, sorry, is an output, okay? So output just it can tell me what is this parameter, is input or output. So what does it mean by scalar variable? Scalar variable basically is, you know, when we go for functions, okay, we have different types of functions. One of them is scalar, let's say functions, or like aggregate functions. So when I have a scalar variable, that means it is the variable, not variable basically, here we'll say function, okay, or variable. It's basically where I can get the information for what? For one record, that means one value. For one value. In this case, I will call it as a scalar variable, okay. For example, when I use sum, if I don't use a group by, I will return how many values? One value, okay. So that's what it means basically. Sure. Now, just go for data type. Let me just go here to make it more. Sorry, let's go for this one first. Please scan your. Okay. Meanwhile, let me just show you first example just to clarify that part. If I go for tables, staff table, any table, okay. Let's go for staff design. Notice here you will have what data type, right? Now, for example, if I go for integer. If I go for int, for example, notice here we have integer, right? At the same time, we have big integer, we have a small integer. But at the end, they are integers. They are not something else. But maybe the scope is different. The same thing goes for money. Money in reality is numeric. See this one here? This is the original. The numeric or a float. Okay, or decimal. Yeah, sorry. We don't have float here. We have decimal. So if you have a numeric, we have decimal, they are nearly the same, okay. Then they said, okay, why we are using money? Because they found a lot of accounting programs are there, and usually money will be basically a numeric format where after the digit, I will have four, what do you call it? After the digit, it will have, let's say, four places, four numbers. For example, that means if I want to make it as numeric, I will say 18,4. So this format, this variant, they call it money. But can you say, okay, I don't want to use money at all, I want to use a numeric? You can, no problem. Clear? So at the end, money is a variant from what? From numeric. No more, no less. It is not a new data type. Clear? Like integer, once again, for integer, I have big integer, as you can see here. I have a small integer. I have tiny integer. So I have like maybe 5 things which is only integers in SQL Server. Okay, clear? I hope it is clear. I hope it is clear. So by this, we finished the lecture by for today for the stored procedure. Oh yes, because no need to change. So any question before I finish? Okay, most welcome, most welcome. So that's all. Please upload the script later. Usually each time if I finish the lecture, I will go to upload the script one by one. You can check your, I already on Teams, just to confirm, on Teams I have already uploaded all the class, I will say content for now, under your lecture, under files, right? Sorry, not yes, I'm totally confused. Sorry. DBS, okay. So under files, right here I have uploaded all the things that you'll need, even database, but not all the code still now. Usually I will be uploading one by one. Okay, clear? Any question before I finish the lecture? So that's most welcome, most welcome. So that's all for today, and see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Sir.
Yes.
Can I have a very quick consultation with you after